Hey guys, Nicole here with you. Today I'm going to show you how to remove some really ugly tiles and prep it for brand new ones. So here is my beautiful kitchen. Look how lovely it is. I think this is around a late 80s, early 90s kitchen. Yeah, pretty ugly. So the first thing I'm going to do is break up the grout so that there's less surface tension as I'm chipping off the tiles. So I've just got my renovator here, or multi-tool you might call it, and I've got the grout removal disc. So I'm just going to go in and break up all of the grout. And I've also got my vacuum attachment just so I can try and keep everything a little bit cleaner. Now it's gonna get messy. For this job I'm going to need a dust mask and some safety glasses. You don't need to remove the grout here. We're just looking to score it so that the tiles will have a little bit less tension and they can actually snap away from each other. You can also just use a box cutter. It's really easy. I also used a box cutter just to cut along the top of the tiles where there was some silicone. Now comes the fun part, smashing the tiles. So this is my first time doing this, so I'm going a little bit gently here, but basically because they're large format tiles, I need to sort of break them in some places so that they come away a little bit easier. Now, also because these are large format tiles, there is no way that I'm going to be able to save the plaster behind these. So at this point, what I could have done is just sort of cut into the plasterboard and cut off all of the tiles all in one piece, which I'm told some people do. But I don't actually know where all the wires and stuff are. I was a little bit scared of that. So what I chose to do was just to sort of chip off all the tiles, not worrying too much about the plasterboard behind it, but just making sure I didn't rip into any of the plasterboard above or below my tile line. And about this stage, I realized I needed to wear gloves. So definitely put your gloves on because these tiles cut. So the tools that you can see me using here is a rubber mallet, and a scraper is sort of what I'm pushing into the tiles. And I'm also using a hammer as well. And then the hammer, the back claws are really quite good for sort of pulling the tiles towards you to get them off. I'm avoiding the tiles that have the power points and phone lines attached to them because you need an electrician to pull these out and cap these off for you so that you can work safely. Now here you can see me getting a little bit more aggressive and just really smacking those tiles with my hammer. This is when it was getting a little bit more fun, and I wasn't so precious about the plasterboard behind, but just making sure that I don't rip into any of those edges because I need to cut those off cleanly. You can see it goes much faster when you've given the tiles a really, really good smash. It's quite easy just to peel all the tiles away. And here is what it looks like with all of those ugly tiles gone. Honestly, I could live with this more than those ugly, ugly tiles. Next, I measured up for the new plasterboard that I needed, and it was so affordable. I paid $50 for 2 sheets of plasterboard and a packet of plasterboard screws, and then it was $15 for a bucket of joint compound. So super affordable. Also, just double check the width of your original plaster. So mine was 10 mil. Now I needed to cut cleanly away all of the old plasterboard, so I just used a knife, and I kind of used a bit of a sawing action whilst I was going along the kitchen bench here. And I had my blade quite short because I didn't want to be cutting into any electrical wires. You should probably actually cut your power off whilst you're doing this so it's a little bit safer. That's Jason, by the way, on the left there. He came in to help me for a couple of days because I could not lift the plasterboard and the bench tops on my own, so I needed a little bit of extra muscle. Thank you, Jason, for helping me. For any edges that weren't surrounded by cabinetry, I just used a spirit level just so that they were really nice and vertical and horizontal, ready for my new plasterboard. I then went around and took out any of the nails or screws, whatever the previous people put them in with. And also there's little dabs of glue. So I just used my scraper to get those off. And this is what it looks like with no walls. That's really weird, but honestly, it was so satisfying to see it like this, all cleaned up, sort of, you know, and ready for new plasterboard. Plasterboard is really easy to cut. You just need to put some dots where you need to mark your lines. I'm doing an L piece out of this one, so I'm going to show you how to do an L whilst I'm here. And then I'm just marking with a pencil and a long metal ruler. You could use a piece of timber or something. And then all you need to do is score with a Stanley knife or box cutter. So just a simple score. It doesn't need to be too hard or intense or anything like that. Just a little score into the plaster. And then when you're doing an L, you need to cut with a plaster knife, which is like a tinkling little saw, into the shorter side. And then just give it a confident whack, and it will snap along that score line. Then just grab your knife and run along the back edge. You're just cutting through the paper here. All the plaster has already been cut. And that is how you cut plasterboard. Super simple. So for this one, we're going to use the tip of our knife here to actually punch into the plaster. And I might actually score this as well. I'm not going to use a ruler because it's quite a small little square. But just scoring it as straight as you can. Oh, that was very straight, Nicole. Very straight. Put on my stand and glove. Okay, so I'm going to come down a little bit and push through. If you're doing a really long piece, it's best to have two people to give it a whack. So because we've cut out certain sections of the gyprock, there's going to be places where there isn't sort of a solid background to give it a bit of support when we put the new gyprock on. So what I'm going to do is just add a few pieces, which I'm going to adhere with some quick grip, just so that there's no sort of play with that once it's all up. So I'm just going to spread this out roughly. And just gonna rub the two surfaces together to get a bit of glue on both sides. And then we're going to leave this to sit for 10 minutes until we stick it up, and then that will give a stronger initial bond so that it'll be set in like half an hour or so, hopefully. All right, let's crack on. So here we've got just these few pieces of gyprock, just giving some extra support so that we don't have any bowing. So before you put up your gyprock over drywall, we're just going to mark wherever these studs are, so these verticals. We're not going to worry about our horizontal ones because they're not at the same distance. So just going to mark all of these top and bottom so we know where to put our screws in. I didn't get a chance to film us actually screwing in the plasterboard, so I just wanted to tell you that we needed to pre-drill and countersink for our plasterboard screws. If you have like an actual plasterboard gun, then that sort of does that automatically, but because I don't have one of those, I just got my drill and I did the drilling and countersinking, and then Jason came in behind me and just screwed them all in. So yeah, here's why I needed Jason. For me to be able to sort of lift this and put it all in place on my own was just going to be way too much. You know what I'm like. I have to do everything myself, but I caved and got someone to help me. And here is what it looks like all up. Oh, this was so exciting. Next up, I needed to plaster all the joints. Now, this first step is called pre-filling, and this is really important. So basically what I'm doing is scoring a line on a 45-degree angle on both the old gyprock and the new gyprock. And this is going to expose some of the plasterboard. I'm then going to fill that hole with joint compound, and the moisture within the joint compound is actually going to soak into the exposed plasterboard and help join those pieces together. It's also going to shrink, so that's why we need to do this first. So I'm using the gyprock multi-purpose joint compound. I've just opened a fresh bucket. Apparently you need to stir with a plastic spatula or something plastic so that you don't scrape bits of plastic off with the edge of your metal broad knife. So I'm just going to give this a quick mix. I don't actually have a hawk. I know I shouldn't be using plastic because I can scrape off little bits, but I'm just going to try and be careful. So to do our first pre-fill layer, go left to right first or right to left, and then you can just sort of make sure that you've got enough into those joints, and then you just want to smooth it out. So you're basically just wanting it in the joint at this stage, not anywhere on the edges. They don't really matter. But at this stage, you can go and do your screw holes anywhere as you're going. In this corner up here, you can see I do actually have a little bit of play in between the boards. It's the glued piece I put behind it didn't actually adhere. So that's why it's really important to do the pre-fill so that you can actually join the boards together carefully. Once you've gone around and filled all of your seams with your pre-filler layer, just leave that to dry overnight or at least 8 hours, and you'll come back and it will look really nice and white. Then you'll need to grab some 120 grit sandpaper and a sanding block and just rub off any bumps, lumps, anything like that. You can see I have a little bit of white on the sides. That's me trying to fill out where it's a tiny bit uneven, but that's totally fine. That's what plaster is for, making everything look nice and even. Oh, here I am sanding. I forgot I filmed this. It's fine. Then just make sure you vacuum off all of that dust, and we are ready for taping. All right, so the tape is like paper and it has a little joint in the middle. Just remember that the joint points towards the wall. All right, so now we need to put some plaster on that our tape is going to stick to. So you don't need a huge amount, but it needs to sort of be about 1 mil thick. So don't scrape off the entire amount when you're sort of putting it off and then scraping it smooth. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a little bit wider than the width of the tape. Okay, so now I've just simply cut a piece of the tape to the right length, and I'm just going to press it in to the plaster just gently, and then I'm going to use my broad knife to squish it in to the wall. And you want to go in one direction, not sort of side and then side, otherwise it'll start bubbling. But yeah, just scrape along. You're wanting to scrape out the majority of the plaster that's in under there. And then you also want to sort of scrape along, putting pressure on the top edge, and then scrape along, putting pressure on the bottom edge, just so that you're feathering those edges as you go. Now, this is my first time plastering, so I'm just taking it slowly. I'm showing you from an absolute beginner viewpoint of how I did this. I will link down below some really helpful professionals that have done some YouTube videos that you really need to watch. Don't just watch mine and then go, oh yep, cool, I can do it. Watch some professionals as well as my video. And here is how I did the corner joint. Look, it's quite messy because this is honestly going to be behind the tiles, so I wasn't really worrying too much about it, but yeah, basically just push the point into the corner. And then here is my one up here. You can see there's a few little bubbles there, made a little mistake, but I managed to sand those out. All right, so we are ready for the second coat. So you can see I'm just trying to take it slowly again. I'm using a trowel this time, so I've moved up in size. And this is really important because each layer of plaster that you put on needs to be a few centimeters on either side wider than the previous. And this is how you get that feathered edge. So you pop it on and then you want to smooth it all out, and then you want to feather the top edge just by putting a little bit extra pressure on that top edge, and then feather the bottom edge by putting a little extra pressure on that top edge. And I have to say I loved doing this. It was much easier than I thought it would be, and it was just beautiful to just feel the plaster going on and smoothing it off, and oh, I really enjoyed this. Using the pre-mixed tub of joint compound was definitely helpful. So I do recommend that rather than mixing your own. And you need to put, after the taping layer, 2 more coats on top, sanding in between each. And then this is how smooth it will look. And the last step is to prime. Now you definitely still need to prime even if you are just putting tiles straight over the top of this. I'm using Cromlin's Aqua Block, and this is a waterproof primer. But basically you need a primer because it really soaks into that plasterboard, and then it will give you the grip that you need to put your tile adhesive onto. And that's basically it, guys. Now you are ready to put whatever kind of tiles you would like over the top of this. If you want to watch me do herringbone tiles, then I will leave a link for the video, assuming that it's uploaded. It's going to be after this one, so it might not be, but probably by the time you're watching this, it will be uploaded. So I'll put a link in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching and supporting me. I love you guys, and I'm so proud to be inspiring you all to do these things yourself. They're not that hard, I promise. And that's another job done. Thanks, guys.